You ever look at someone and just know they're hiding something? That was Richard, my boss. The guy had this perfect, all-American family man vibe, smiling photos of him, his beautiful wife, and their 2 kids on his office desk. Always talking about how family is everything, while driving a brand new Tesla and flexing his Rolex like he earned every cent through honest hard work. On the surface, he was a hero. But I knew, deep down, there was something rotten under that expensive suit of his. I just didn't know how bad it was until I caught him red-handed. I'm Mark, 31, and I've been grinding at this mid-sized marketing firm for 5 years. I put in the work, the late nights, the weekends. Hell, I even skipped vacations to make sure my campaigns were flawless. I was on track for a promotion that would finally give me a real shot at paying off my student loans. But when the time came, guess who swooped in during the final meeting and took credit for my project? Richard, my boss, my so-called mentor. And, of course, management ate it up. He's got that smooth-talking charm that makes people think he's the smartest guy in the room, when in reality, he's just a snake who knows how to slither out of blame and steal other people's ideas. That night, after getting screwed over, again, I stayed late at the office. I couldn't sleep, and I wanted to make sure the next project was bulletproof so that maybe next time I'd get the recognition I deserved. But fate decided to throw me something far more interesting than a marketing plan. I was heading to the break room to grab a coffee when I heard noises, and not the kind of noises you want to hear at work. Moaning, whispering, a giggle that made my stomach twist. I stopped dead in my tracks, listening. The sound was coming from Richard's office. I peeked through the tiny glass panel on the door, and bam, there it was. Richard, half-dressed, with one of our co-workers, Ashley, perched on his desk like it was a scene straight out of some sleazy office drama. I froze. Not because I was shocked he was cheating. No, I always suspected he was that kind of guy, but because of how careless he was about it. His office door wasn't even locked. I could have walked away, pretended I didn't see anything. But something inside me snapped. This man didn't just steal my ideas and take my promotion. He was lying to everyone, his wife, his kids, and our entire team. And honestly, I was done playing nice. So I grabbed my phone and hit record. Just a few seconds, enough to capture the unmistakable scene. When I got home that night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I replayed that short video over and over. And that's when the idea hit me. Maybe it was time to give Richard a taste of his own medicine. He'd spent years screwing people over, literally and figuratively. Maybe I was the guy who'd finally put an end to his little empire. But I knew one thing for sure. If I wanted to take down a guy like Richard, I couldn't rush it. No, I'd have to play this smart. I'd have to be patient. I'd have to let him think he was winning while I quietly built the perfect revenge plan. Looking back now, that was the night everything changed for me. The night I realized I didn't just want revenge, I needed it. And trust me, I was going to make sure Richard would never see it coming. The next day at work, I couldn't look at Richard the same way. Every time I saw that smug grin of his, I wanted to laugh. I had a secret, something that could burn his entire perfect man image to ashes. But I knew better than to act too quickly. Guys like him are slippery. If I confronted him right away, he'd spin some story, blame Ashley, or maybe even find a way to pin something on me. No, I needed more than one piece of evidence. So I played it cool. I walked into the office like nothing happened. When I passed by Richard's office, Ashley was already there, fixing her lipstick in the reflection of his window. She glanced at me, and for a second, I swear she looked nervous. Maybe she thought I'd heard something the night before. I just gave her my usual nod and went back to my desk. Inside, though, I was grinning. That week, I started staying late more often. Not just to work, but to watch. I became a shadow in my own office, always one step behind Richard's little secret meetings. It was shockingly easy to track him. I noticed a pattern. He and Ashley always left the office at the same time, always took lunch together, and sometimes he'd mysteriously work late on nights when I knew his wife was busy with their kids. Then came the second catch. It was a Thursday night, about 9 p.m. Most of the building was empty except for a few janitors. I pretended to leave, but doubled back through the stairwell and slipped into the darkened conference room across from Richard's office. From there, I had the perfect view through the glass wall. Sure enough, they were at it again. Ashley perched on his desk, giggling while he whispered something into her ear. I didn't need another video. One was enough to ruin him. But this time, I wanted something worse. I waited until they left, then snuck into his office. Richard was careless. He didn't even bother closing out of his emails. I skimmed through his inbox and found something way bigger than an affair. He'd been secretly funneling my work to a special client and taking all the credit. Worse, he was padding the budget on projects to make it look like we were overspending while pocketing the difference. That's when I realized I wasn't just going to expose him for cheating. I was going to destroy his career. I started collecting everything: emails, screenshots, copies of project files with my name on them, even timestamps proving he was stealing ideas. I created a private folder at home, labeling everything like I was building a case. Because, honestly, I was. The next day, I tested the waters with Ashley. During lunch, I casually brought up how hard Richard must be working lately. She smirked but didn't say anything. I could tell she was hiding something. So I pushed a little, mentioning how the janitors complain about people leaving messes after hours. Her face went pale. She knew I knew something. That reaction told me all I needed to know. I had leverage. I didn't plan to use it against her. She wasn't my target, but it meant Richard would panic if he even suspected I had dirt on him. And that was going to work in my favor. That night, as I sat on my couch going through all the evidence I collected, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: power. For once, I wasn't just the guy working late, hoping for a scrap of recognition. I was the guy who held the match that could burn this entire fake kingdom to the ground. And trust me, I was just getting started. If I had any doubt about destroying Richard, it vanished that Friday. We were in a big meeting with upper management, presenting ideas for a new national ad campaign. This was my baby, an idea I'd been polishing for weeks, something that could put our firm on the map. I'd stayed up until 3 a.m. the night before making sure every slide was perfect. And then Richard walked in, all confident and smug, like he owned the place. He didn't even bring his laptop. I thought, good, he'll let me handle this one. This is my moment. But I should have known better. Halfway through my presentation, he cuts me off, starts rephrasing my ideas like they're his own, and then, get this, he takes over my entire pitch. "Great work, Mark," he says at the end, like I'm just some intern who fetched him coffee. But you know, this campaign really came together when I refined the vision. I wanted to stand up and call him out in front of everyone. I wanted to say, "Are you kidding me?" But I couldn't. He was my boss. And in that moment, I felt like every ounce of hard work I'd put in over the past 5 years didn't mean a damn thing. After the meeting, everyone was patting Richard on the back like he was a genius. Meanwhile, I'm standing there, the guy who actually did all the work, and I might as well have been invisible. I went back to my desk and just sat there, fists clenched, staring at my screen. I wasn't angry anymore. I was beyond that. I was cold, focused. That was the moment I decided, I'm taking him down. Not just for stealing my ideas, but for everything. For the late nights he made me work while he took the credit. For the times he forgot to put me on bonus lists. For every smug smirk when I was passed over for a promotion. The affair? That was the perfect bonus. If I played this right, I could ruin his marriage and his career in one clean move. But I knew I needed a plan that was bulletproof. So I started digging even deeper. I began to look into Richard's clients. I found out he had a few side projects where he was charging the company for work that didn't even exist. Basically, he was billing fake hours to pad his paycheck. It was fraud, plain and simple. I started documenting everything: screenshots of invoices, emails that didn't add up, and files with hidden metadata showing I was the real creator of the campaigns he bragged about. The more I found, the angrier I got. But that anger was turning into something sharper: strategy. Around this time, I started chatting with his wife more. She'd occasionally drop by the office with their kids, all smiles, completely unaware of the snake she was married to. I played the friendly coworker card, always polite, always helpful. I knew that, when the time came, I'd need her to trust me. Richard, of course, had no idea. He thought I was just the quiet guy, in the corner who worked too hard. And I let him think that. The truth? I was watching his every move. I was learning his patterns. I was setting the chessboard. And the best part? He had no idea he was already playing my game. The more I thought about Richard, the more I realized that taking him down wouldn't be simple. He was too good at playing the golden boy role in front of management. If I just dropped evidence of his cheating, it would cause a scandal, sure, but he'd probably find a way to spin it. He'd claim it was a misunderstanding, that I was jealous, or that Ashley was the one coming on to him. No, I needed a plan that would not only expose him, but leave no room for excuses. So I started with the basics, gathering everything. I went through old project files and dug up every piece of work he'd stolen from me. I compared my original drafts with his final versions, making sure I had timestamps and backup copies on external drives. Then I moved on to emails, both the ones he sent to clients and the internal ones where he subtly took credit for my work. I had so much dirt on him that I started organizing it into folders like a lawyer preparing for trial. Cheating, fraud, stolen ideas. But I needed something more personal. That's where his assistant, Jenna, came in. She's in her mid-20s, smart, but overworked and underpaid, like the rest of us. Richard treats her like a servant, barking orders and taking zero responsibility when something goes wrong. So, I started being friendly with her. Nothing suspicious, just casual conversations. "Hey Jenna," I'd say while grabbing coffee. "How does Richard keep track of all these client invoices? I'm drowning in numbers on my projects." She'd roll her eyes. "Oh, trust me, I'm the one drowning. He doesn't keep track of anything. I'm the one cleaning up his messes." Bingo. That's all I needed to know. Richard wasn't careful. I let Jenna vent about him over lunch a few times, and the more she opened up, the more I learned. Like how he had 2 separate work phones and a personal Gmail account he used for side projects. She even mentioned, without realizing it, that his wife had no idea about the second phone. That little detail was gold. Meanwhile, I started a subtle friendship with Richard's wife, Melissa. She was kind, warm, and honestly way too good for him. She'd drop by the office sometimes, and I made sure to be the helpful guy who carried boxes for her or complimented her baking when she brought cupcakes for the staff. Nothing flirtatious, just enough to build trust. "Mark, you're always so helpful," she told me once, smiling. "I wish Richard had more people like you on his team." If only she knew. By this point, I had a rough plan forming in my head. Step 1. Get undeniable proof of his affair that could also be tied to his work life. Step 2. Build a paper trail showing how he'd been stealing ideas and committing fraud. Step 3. Create a situation where he would hang himself with his own words. And then, when everything was ready, I'd strike. To start tightening the noose, I needed Richard to trust me completely. So I played the loyal employee card. I stayed late, offered to help with his projects, and made him feel like I was his right-hand man. It worked. He started bragging to me. "Mark, you wouldn't believe the kind of deals I've been pulling off lately," he said one night when we were the last ones in the office. "You gotta be bold in this business. Take risks, you know." I just nodded, pretending to be impressed, while secretly recording the conversation on my phone. Every day, I felt like I was pulling one more thread from his carefully woven web. And when that web collapsed, I was going to make sure he fell hard. Revenge isn't just about striking back, it's about timing. If I wanted to take Richard down, I couldn't just slam all my evidence on the table. No, I needed him to dig his own grave first. I needed him to trust me so much that he'd let his guard down completely. So I started building that illusion. I became the perfect employee. I showed up early, stayed late, and made sure Richard saw me as his go-to guy. Every time he had a problem, I was there with a solution. When he bragged about some fake client deal, I nodded along like a loyal soldier. And the best part? The more I fed his ego, the more reckless he became. I began setting traps, little ones at first, just to see how he'd react. For example, I'd leave incomplete drafts of marketing proposals on the shared drive, ones with subtle mistakes that only I could fix. Richard would swoop in, steal the draft, and present it as his own idea, only to look like a fool when management spotted the errors. Then, I'd swoop in to fix everything, looking like the hero. It was a small win, but it made him rely on me even more. Jenna, his assistant, unintentionally became my secret ally. She'd complain to me during coffee breaks about how Richard dumped all his work on her while he played golf during business hours. "You know," I'd say casually, "you should keep copies of everything you do for him, just in case." She didn't question it. Soon enough, she was unknowingly helping me collect proof of his incompetence. Meanwhile, I kept strengthening my connection with his wife, Melissa. I never overstepped, but I made sure she saw me as someone trustworthy. One day, she mentioned how Richard was working late again and how proud she was of his dedication. I almost laughed. Instead, I simply said, "He's lucky to have such a supportive wife," planting a tiny seed of doubt without her realizing it. The more Richard trusted me, the more careless he got. He'd leave his laptop unlocked, his phone lying around, and even ask me to send quick updates to clients from his email. I used every opportunity to gather more dirt, screenshots of shady invoices, messages with Ashley, and proof of him redirecting company funds into his personal account. But the real genius of my plan came when I decided to create something big, a fake, golden deal that Richard wouldn't be able to resist. It started as just an idea, a fake client with a massive budget that would look like the jackpot to a greedy man like him. I'd set up a dummy email account, fake business cards, and even a basic website to make it look legitimate. Why? Because I needed him to bite. If I could trick him into putting all his cards on the table with this fake deal, it would give me the perfect evidence of fraud and incompetence. And knowing Richard, he'd brag to management about it before even checking the details. I spent weeks preparing, all while keeping my poker face at the office. I smiled, I nodded, I played the loyal sidekick. But in the back of my mind, every day I was sharpening the knife. By the end of that month, Richard was so comfortable around me that he started letting slip details about his little adventures with Ashley. He even laughed about how Melissa will never know. Oh, Richard, you had no idea. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that a perfect revenge plan needs more than evidence. It needs emotional impact. And what could hurt Richard more than losing the one person who actually believed in him? Melissa. Up until this point, I'd played it slow and careful with her. But now it was time to start planting seeds that would grow into full-blown suspicion. I didn't want to just dump the affair in her lap. That would make it look like I had some kind of agenda. Instead, I let her start connecting the dots herself. It started small. One evening, she stopped by the office to bring Richard dinner. He wasn't there. Ashley, however, was leaving in a hurry, looking flustered. I accidentally let slip. Oh, Melissa, I thought you were picking Richard up from his meeting with Ashley. Must have just missed him. Her eyebrows furrowed. Meeting? She asked. Yeah. You know, they've been working late a lot lately, I said casually, as if I didn't mean anything by it. Then I quickly changed the subject. That look in her eyes told me I'd planted the first crack in Richard's perfect facade. The next step was the evidence. I had enough photos, screenshots, and that golden video from weeks ago to blow this thing wide open. But instead of sending it directly to her, I decided to be subtle. I left an envelope on her car dashboard one day when I knew she'd be visiting the office. Inside was a single printed screenshot of a flirty email exchange between Richard and Ashley. Just enough to make her curious, but not enough to give her all the answers. Sure enough, a week later, Melissa came by again, this time with a strange energy. She lingered near my desk, clearly hesitant. Mark, she said softly, can I ask you something? Off the record? I looked up like I didn't know what was coming. Of course. What's up? Has Richard been acting different lately? Working late a lot, taking calls at odd hours? I gave her a sympathetic look, like I was caught between loyalty and honesty. Melissa, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but yeah, he's been busy. A lot more than usual. She didn't press me, but I could see it in her face. She knew something was wrong. And that was exactly what I wanted. While Melissa was starting to question him, I was busy building the other half of my revenge plan, the fake golden deal. I spent hours creating a flawless facade, a fake company website, email addresses, even LinkedIn profiles for the fake executives. The fictional company, Crestfall Media Group, looked like a real player in the market. I even set up a fake phone line that went straight to a voicemail I recorded, posing as the CEO. The bait was perfect, a multi-million-dollar national branding campaign that would make Richard look like a hero if he landed it. I drafted a fake proposal and accidentally mentioned to Richard that I'd been approached by an old college friend who worked at Crestfall Media. You know, Mark, Richard said, leaning back in his chair, something like that could make both of us look like rock stars to the board. Why don't you let me handle the negotiations? You focus on the creative stuff, you're good at that. Exactly what I wanted him to say. Behind the scenes, I started leaking just enough information to Melissa to make her dig deeper. I sent her another anonymous envelope, this time with a photo of Richard's car parked outside a hotel where I knew he and Ashley met. I also sent a few lines from an email chain I found on a public printer in the office. The beauty of it all was that Richard had no clue. He thought everything was going perfectly. He was too busy planning how he'd present our Crestfall deal to the board, bragging about his supposed big win. But he didn't know that both of his worlds, his career and his marriage, were about to collide in the most destructive way possible. And I was just getting ready to pull the trigger. Richard had no idea that the walls were closing in. By the time I hit the 7th week of my plan, both of his worlds were starting to crack. Melissa was asking more questions, and Richard was so distracted with the fake Crestfall deal that he didn't notice the storm I was quietly brewing around him. Melissa called me one evening. Yes, she called me. I'd never given her my number, but Jenna must have passed it along when Melissa stopped by the office looking for Richard. Her voice was shaking, but she was trying to stay calm. Mark, I need to ask you something, she said. Do you think Richard is really working late? Or is there something going on I should know about? I hesitated, letting silence fill the line. I wanted her to think I was torn between loyalty and honesty. Melissa, I don't know how to say this, but maybe you should ask him directly. I don't want to get between you two. That silence on her end? It was deadly. She knew. She just needed proof. And I had plenty. The very next day, I left another envelope. This one with a printed photo of Richard and Ashley at the bar near the office. His hand was on her lower back, and there was no mistaking the way they were looking at each other. I didn't include any words. No explanation. Just the photo. Melissa didn't show up at the office that week, but I knew what was coming. She was probably gathering her own evidence now. Good. The more she dug, the deeper Richard's grave got. Meanwhile, I was tightening the noose at work. The Crestfall deal was in full swing, or at least, that's what Richard believed. I'd set up a series of fake email exchanges between myself and Crestfall executives, a.k.a. me, using a burner email account and a fake name. I made it look like a multi-million-dollar contract was just around the corner, and Richard ate it up. This is huge, Mark, he said, slapping me on the back during one of our late-night strategy sessions. This is the kind of deal that gets people promoted. Hell, the board might even consider me for a regional director position after this. I smiled, pretending to be impressed. Inside, I was laughing. He had no idea he was bragging about a deal that didn't exist. To make it more convincing, I accidentally forwarded him an email thread where the Crestfall CEO was impressed with his leadership. Of course, it was me writing that email, but Richard bought it without question. He was so desperate to look like a genius that he didn't even notice the tiny, deliberate inconsistencies I left in the emails. Then, I added fuel to the fire. I casually mentioned to upper management that Richard was handling a very big deal and that I was just assisting. That way, when everything crashed, the blame would land squarely on him. And trust me, the crash was coming. By Friday, I got a text from Melissa. Can we meet? I need to talk to you. We met at a quiet coffee shop near the office. She looked exhausted, pale, with dark circles under her eyes. Mark, she said, her voice shaking. I know something's going on. I need to hear it from someone I can trust. Is he cheating on me? I took a deep breath and nodded slowly. Melissa, I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but yes. I've seen it. I'm sorry. She covered her face with her hands, crying softly. And I'll be honest, it wasn't easy watching her break like that. But I reminded myself, this was Richard's fault, not mine. When she left, I knew she'd confront him. And that confrontation would be the first real crack in the fake empire he'd built. Meanwhile, I prepared the final stages of the Crestfall trap. The next week, Richard would present the deal to the board. And when the truth came out, it would destroy him. The following Monday felt different. You know when the air just feels heavier, like something bad is about to happen? That was the vibe in the office. Richard walked in late, looking like he hadn't slept all weekend. His tie was crooked, and for the first time since I'd known him, his fake, Mr. Perfect grin wasn't there. Melissa must have confronted him. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. His whole body screamed tension. He slammed his office door shut, something he rarely did, and I could hear him pacing inside. Later that morning, Jenna told me that Richard had spent half an hour on the phone with someone, shouting and cursing. My guess? Melissa had either kicked him out or threatened divorce. I smiled to myself. Stage 1 of my revenge was working beautifully, but I wasn't done. Not even close. I made sure to check in with Richard on the fake Crestfall deal, acting like I was just the helpful coworker keeping things on track. Hey, Richard, I said, sticking my head into his office. Crestfall emailed about the final proposal. You want me to forward it to you? He looked up, clearly distracted, and just waved. Yeah, handle it. I'll take the credit later. Perfect. Meanwhile, I started feeding small doubts to upper management. Over casual coffee breaks, I drop lines like, "You know, Richard's been juggling a lot lately. I'm a bit concerned about how he's handling this Crestfall thing. It's such a huge opportunity. Just hope nothing falls through the cracks." It worked. By Wednesday, our CFO stopped by my desk and asked, "Mark, you're closer to this Crestfall project than I am. Everything solid with that deal?" I smiled. "Oh, absolutely. Richard's been handling the negotiation personally. I'm just supporting on the creative end." Translation: if this ship sinks, Richard's going down with it. That same afternoon, I saw Melissa. She came to the office. No smile this time, no cupcakes. She walked right past me and went straight into Richard's office, slamming the door behind her. Everyone in the office turned their heads like it was a scene out of a soap opera. 10 minutes later, I heard shouting. Her voice was shaking with rage. His tone was defensive and panicked. When she stormed out, she looked at me for a second. Her eyes said everything. She knew, and I was the only one who'd been honest with her. Richard didn't come out of his office for the rest of the day. By Thursday, the guy looked like a wreck. He'd stopped shaving, and his usually polished appearance had been replaced by wrinkled shirts and a short temper. He barked at Jenna over the smallest things. Ashley, smart enough to sense a sinking ship, kept her distance. And while his personal life was falling apart, I was tightening the noose on the Crestfall trap. I accidentally forwarded him a fake contract draft with inflated numbers, the kind that would make upper management drool. I made sure the document had subtle inconsistencies, typos, missing signatures, things that would expose him when he tried to present it as his own. That Friday, Richard called me into his office. "Mark," he said, trying to sound composed, "I'm going to present Crestfall to the board next week. Big meeting, big opportunity. I'll need you to prepare all the creative mock-ups. Don't screw this up." I nodded. "Of course, Richard. I'll make it shine." Oh, it would shine, just not in the way he thought. As I left his office, I felt that rush again, the feeling of being 10 steps ahead. Richard was spiraling. His wife was furious. Management was watching him closely, and he was about to walk into the biggest humiliation of his career. All I had to do now was finish setting the stage. The day of the big board meeting finally arrived. This was it, the moment I'd been building toward for weeks. My fake Crestfall deal was ready to blow up right in Richard's face, and I had every piece of evidence lined up like dominoes, ready to fall. Richard walked into the office that morning looking like hell. His hair was a mess, his shirt was wrinkled, and he reeked of stress and cheap cologne. Melissa hadn't come by in days, and word around the office was that she'd kicked him out. He tried to act confident, but his eyes gave him away. He was terrified. "Mark," he barked, trying to sound authoritative, "make sure the mock-ups are in the conference room by 2 p.m. We're presenting Crestfall to the board today, and I'm not taking any chances." "Oh, don't worry," I said with a calm smile. "Everything's ready. It's going to be unforgettable." By the time the meeting started, the entire executive team was seated around the long table, waiting to hear about this game-changing deal Richard had been bragging about for weeks. I sat off to the side, playing my role as the quiet creative guy, while inside I was practically buzzing with anticipation. Richard stood at the front of the room, grinning like he had already won. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "today I'm proud to present a partnership with Crestfall Media Group, one of the fastest-growing firms in the country. This deal is going to revolutionize our reach and take our brand to the next level." He clicked through the slides, my slides, completely unaware that I had slipped in a few special ones at the end. The first few slides looked normal, showcasing fake stats and glowing testimonials. The board members nodded, impressed. Then came the moment. "Here's a sample of the final contract," Richard said, clicking to the next slide. Except it wasn't the contract. It was a screenshot of one of Richard's emails, an email where he mocked upper management for being too stupid to notice that he was taking credit for other people's work. Gasps filled the room. Richard froze. "Wait. That's not," he stammered, frantically clicking the remote. But every slide that followed was another nail in his coffin. Screenshots of him redirecting company funds, emails to Ashley bragging about how Melissa will never know. And finally, the piece de resistance, a still image from the video I'd taken of him and Ashley in his office. The room went dead silent. "Richard," the CFO said in a low, dangerous tone, "what the hell is this?" I don't know. This isn't my mark. Did you?" Richard turned to me, his face pale as a ghost. I stood slowly, my voice calm but firm. Everything you just saw is real. Richard's been stealing ideas, misusing company funds, and jeopardizing our reputation with a deal that doesn't even exist. Crestfall Media Group? I made it up. Every single email, every message. He fell for all of it because he was too busy taking credit for other people's work to actually do his own. Richard's mouth opened, but no words came out. The CEO slammed a hand on the table. Get out, Richard. You're done here. No. Wait, I can explain. Richard pleaded, but security was already on the way. The room was buzzing with shock and anger, and I just stood there, feeling the tension melt away. As they escorted Richard out of the building, I locked eyes with Jenna. She gave me the smallest smile, like she knew exactly what had just happened. I'd done it. Richard was finished, his career, his reputation, his marriage. All of it, gone in one brutal, perfectly timed strike. And for the first time in years, I felt free. After that boardroom showdown, everything in my life shifted. It felt like I'd been holding my breath for years, and finally, I could exhale. Richard was gone, completely and utterly wiped out. Word spread fast. Within 48 hours, every senior figure in our industry knew about his scandal. He didn't just lose his job. He lost his reputation, his marriage, and any chance of crawling back into the corporate world. Melissa filed for divorce almost immediately. I heard she kept the house, the car, and even managed to freeze his accounts because of the evidence of fraud. I didn't pry, but a week later, she sent me a text. Thank you. I know you didn't do this for me, but you saved me from years of lies. I won't forget it. That message hit different. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about knowing that someone good, like Melissa, got a chance to start over. As for me, the company treated me like a damn hero. Turns out, when you expose fraud and save the firm from a multi-million-dollar disaster, people notice. The CEO pulled me aside the day after Richard's exit and said, Mark, we should have recognized your talent sooner. How about we fix that? 2 weeks later, I was sitting in Richard's old office, but it wasn't his office anymore. It was mine. Same leather chair he used to brag from. But now it belonged to someone who actually worked for it. I got the promotion I deserved years ago, plus a salary bump that nearly doubled what I'd been making. For the first time, I felt like I was being seen for what I truly brought to the table. I didn't stop there. With the extra money, I started investing in myself. I enrolled in leadership courses, revamped my portfolio, and even started mentoring new employees, because I remembered what it felt like to be that guy in the corner, invisible, while someone else took the credit. Not on my watch anymore. One night, a few months after Richard's downfall, I ran into Melissa at a charity event. She looked different, lighter, happier, free. We talked for a while, just catching up. There was no bitterness in her voice, just gratitude. She said she was thinking about starting her own business, and I offered to help her with branding and marketing. She smiled, and I could tell she was finally moving on. So was I? I won't lie. There was a part of me that wondered if revenge had turned me into someone darker. But the truth is, I didn't destroy Richard out of spite. I just exposed who he really was. He burned himself down. I just handed him the match. Now, when I walk into the office each morning, I feel different. I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm thriving. I take time off when I need it. I spend weekends with friends. I travel. Life feels mine again. Looking back, I don't regret a single step. Sometimes you have to stand up for yourself in ways that no one else will. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. And me? I'm living proof that the quiet guy in the corner can bring down the king and come out stronger, freer, and happier on the other side. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Did he do the right thing?